Blood dripped from my mouth onto the cold linoleum floor of the gynecologist's waiting room. My stepbrother Will stood over me, his fist still clenched, his voice echoing off the walls as other patients scrambled away in horror. "Choose how you pay or get out!" he screamed, waving legal papers in my face. "Sign these now or I'll make sure you never set foot in Dad's house again." The stitches from my emergency surgery just 3 days ago felt like they were tearing apart as I tried to push myself up from the floor. The nurse was already calling 911, her hands shaking as badly as mine, but Will didn't care. He never did. I'm Donna Underwood, and I'm 32 years old. 2 weeks ago, I had a future, a baby on the way, a father who loved me, and a place I called home. Now, I was bleeding on a medical office floor while my stepbrother tried to steal everything my father left me. It started 3 days after Dad's funeral. I just lost the baby. A miscarriage at 14 weeks that turned into an emergency D&C when the bleeding wouldn't stop. The doctors said I was lucky to survive. Funny how people throw that word around. Lucky. I was staying at Dad's house, trying to heal both physically and emotionally, when Will and my stepmother, Veronica, showed up with a moving truck. They didn't knock. Will just used his key and walked in like he owned the place, Veronica trailing behind him with that fake sympathy plastered across her face. "Oh, Donna, sweetheart," she cooed. "We heard about the baby. Such a tragedy." But her eyes were already cataloging Dad's antiques, probably calculating their resale value. Will got straight to business. He slapped a stack of papers on the kitchen counter, the same counter where Dad used to make his famous Sunday pancakes. "Sign these. Dad left everything to Mom and me. You get $10,000 if you sign today. Tomorrow it drops to 5. I almost laughed. My father, who raised me alone after my mother died when I was 7, who built Underwood Construction from nothing into a $10 million company, would never leave me out of his will. "That's ridiculous," I told him. "I want to see Dad's real will." That's when things got ugly. Will's face turned that particular shade of purple I remembered from childhood, the color that meant someone was about to get hurt. "This is the real will," he snarled. "Dad signed it 2 weeks before he died. You were too busy with your pregnancy drama to notice he'd written you off." Pregnancy drama. That's what he called losing my first child at 32, after 3 years of trying. I tried to stay calm, told him I needed time to think, to talk to a lawyer. Will gave me 24 hours, but when I showed up for my follow-up appointment at the gynecologist, he was there in the waiting room. How he knew about my appointment, I didn't know yet, though I'd learn later that Veronica had been going through my phone while I slept. "Time's up," he announced, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Sign now or get out of the house today." I said no. That's when he slapped me so hard I hit the floor, tasting copper as blood filled my mouth. My ribs, still tender from the surgery, screamed in protest. He sneered down at me. "You think you're too good for 10,000? Fine. Now you get nothing." The police arrived within minutes, lights flashing, other patients giving statements. Will tried his usual charm on them. He was just upset about his father's death. His stepsister was being unreasonable. Families sometimes disagree, but it's hard to explain away a woman bleeding on the floor with clear handprint across her face. They arrested him, but Veronica bailed him out within 2 hours. By the time I got back to Dad's house that evening, with my friend Margie driving me because I was too shaky to drive myself, the locks had been changed. My belongings were scattered across the front lawn. Clothes, books, photo albums, everything. The neighbor's sprinklers had already soaked half of it. But what broke me was seeing my mother's jewelry box, the one Dad gave her on their 10th anniversary, smashed open on the driveway, her pearls scattered like tears across the concrete. Before we continue, please subscribe and tell me in the comments where you're watching from and what time is it there. I see everything. Thank you so much for your support. Margie helped me gather what we could salvage from the lawn. She's 73, retired forensic accountant, sharp as a surgical scalpel, and she'd been Dad's friend for 20 years. "This isn't right, honey," she kept muttering as we picked up soggy photo albums. "Your daddy would never do this to you." She was right, of course. Dad had talked about his will plenty of times, especially after his first heart attack last year. He'd always said the same thing. Everything splits equal between you and the company employees' pension fund, Donna. Will and Veronica get the house in Florida and $100,000 each. Fair's fair. But Will had other plans. As we loaded my ruined belongings into Margie's ancient Buick, Mrs. Patterson from next door finally worked up the courage to approach us. She kept glancing at the house nervously, like Will might jump out any second. "Donna, dear," she whispered. "I didn't want to say anything at the funeral, but your father was very upset the week before he passed. He came to borrow my phone once, said he didn't trust his own anymore, said someone was listening." That night, sleeping on Margie's couch with an ice pack on my face, I couldn't stop thinking about Dad's final weeks. He'd been acting strange, secretive, paranoid even. I'd attributed it to his heart medication. But what if it was something else? At 3 a.m, I woke to the sound of breaking glass. Someone was trying to get into Margie's house. We called 911 and huddled in her bedroom with her late husband's baseball bat. But by the time police arrived, whoever it was had gone. They'd left a message spray-painted on Margie's garage door. "Stop digging, or next time we come in." Will showed up the next morning, all fake concern and barely concealed threats. "Heard you had some trouble last night," he said, leaning against Margie's doorframe like he owned that too. "Neighborhood's getting dangerous. Maybe you should think about moving somewhere. Safer. Like another state." Margie wasn't having it. "William Henderson." She used his full name like a weapon. "I've known you since you were 16 and stealing from your mother's purse. You don't scare me. Now get off my property before I show you what this old lady keeps in her purse." She patted her handbag meaningfully, and Will actually took a step back. After he left, Margie pulled out her laptop. "Honey, I did the books for your daddy's company for 15 years before I retired. Still have my access codes. Your daddy never was good about changing passwords. Let's see what Will's been up to." What we found made my blood run cold. For the past 5 years, Will had been bleeding the company dry. False invoices, shell companies, ghost employees. He'd stolen almost $500,000 just in the last year alone. The patterns were clever, almost invisible unless you knew what to look for. But Margie knew. "This is federal crime territory," she said, adjusting her reading glasses. "Wire fraud, tax evasion, the works. But honey, there's something else." She pulled up another screen. "These withdrawals started getting bigger about 6 months ago, right when your daddy's heart problems got worse." I remembered. Dad's medication had been changed 3 times in 6 months. Each time he seemed to get worse instead of better. The doctor couldn't understand it. Said Dad wasn't responding typically to treatment. Margie had a theory, and it chilled me to the bone. What if someone was tampering with his medication? She'd seen it before in her forensic accounting days, family members hurrying along an inheritance by playing with prescriptions. That's when I remembered Dad's last coherent words to me in the hospital. "Check the basement safe, Donna, behind the water heater, your mother's birthday." He'd seemed so urgent, but then the morphine kicked in and he never woke up again. We needed to get into that house. Will and Veronica had changed the locks, but they didn't know about the basement window Dad had never fixed properly, the one I used to sneak in through in high school. At 2 a.m, dressed in black like cat burglars, Margie and I crept across the backyard. "I can't believe I'm breaking and entering at my age," Margie whispered, holding the flashlight while I jimmied the window. "Though, technically, honey, this is still your house until probate goes through." The basement smelled like Dad, Old Spice and wood shavings from his workshop. Behind the water heater, hidden by a false panel I'd never noticed before, was a safe. Mom's birthday opened it on the first try. Inside were 3 things that changed everything. Dad's real will, properly notarized and dated just 1 month ago, a thick folder of evidence documenting Will's embezzlement, and a letter in Dad's shaky handwriting. "My dear Donna," it read. "If you're reading this, then my suspicions were correct. I've been feeling worse since Will started giving me my medications, insisted on helping after my last heart attack. I've been documenting everything. The company forensic audit is in this folder. Will doesn't know I hired an outside firm. I'm sorry I couldn't tell you. He monitors my calls. Trust Margie. Trust Gary Garrison. Don't let them win. All my love, Dad." My hands shook as I read. Will had been poisoning my father, slowly, carefully, making it look like natural decline. And Veronica? I grabbed another folder from the safe. This one older, newspaper clippings, yellow with age. Oh my God, Margie breathed, reading over my shoulder. Veronica's first husband died of heart problems. Second husband, kidney failure. Third husband, stroke. All within 3 years of marriage. All left her everything. My father was husband number 4. We photographed everything. Then Margie noticed something else. Will's computer was still logged in upstairs. Quick look, she suggested, and we crept up the stairs. The house felt wrong without Dad in it, like even the walls knew something terrible had happened here. Will's email was a goldmine of stupid criminal behavior. Messages to Veronica. Old man took his pills like clockwork. Double dose in his coffee this morning. Transfer another $50K before the audit. Donna's getting suspicious. We need to move faster, but the worst was from 3 weeks ago. If we can't get Donna to sign, we'll need to handle her like we discussed. Handle me, like they handled Dad. If you're still with me, please hit that like button and subscribe for more stories. Your support means everything. The next morning, we took everything to Gary Garrison, Dad's lawyer for 30 years. He had an office above the old hardware store downtown, all wood paneling and law books that probably hadn't been opened since the Clinton administration. Gary was 72, supposedly semi-retired, but his mind was sharp as ever. "I knew it!" he exclaimed, slapping his desk so hard his coffee jumped. "Your daddy came to me 6 weeks ago, scared out of his mind. Said Will was up to something, but he needed proof. I told him to be careful, to document everything." His face fell. I should have done more. Gary still had connections everywhere. Judges, federal prosecutors, IRS investigators who owed him favors. This is big, Donna. Will didn't just steal from the company. He stole from the employees' pension fund. That's federal. And if we can prove he was poisoning your father, that's when Detective Riley walked in. She was everything you'd want in a cop. Mid-40s, tough as nails, with eyes that had seen too much but still held compassion. "Mr. Garrison called me," she said, shaking my hand. "My mother went through something similar. Caregiver was slowly poisoning her for the inheritance. I take these cases personally." Riley had been investigating Veronica for months. She popped up on our radar after husband number 3. The insurance companies started asking questions. But she's smart, always moves states, always waits a few years between marriages. Your father was supposed to be her retirement plan. We spent the next week building our case. Margie worked her magic with the financial records, finding trails Will thought he'd hidden. Gary prepared legal briefs that would freeze the estate and stop any transfer of assets. Riley got warrants for phone records, bank statements, and most importantly, Dad's medication bottles. The pills tested positive for 3 times the prescribed amount of digoxin, Riley told us. At that dose, it would cause exactly the symptoms your father experienced. Slow enough to look natural, fast enough to kill within months. But we needed more. We needed Will to confess. That's when I remembered something about my stepbrother. His ego was bigger than his brain. He always had to brag, had to be the smartest guy in the room. If I played broken, if I let him think he'd won, maybe he'd get careless. I need to call him, I told the team. Tell him I'm ready to sign. Margie looked worried. Honey, he's dangerous. I know, but he's also greedy, and greed makes people stupid. The call was hard. I had to cry. Not difficult given everything that had happened. I had to sound defeated, broken. Will, it's Donna. You win. I can't do this anymore. I'll sign whatever you want. I just want Mom's jewelry box back, please. I could hear his smile through the phone. Finally came to your senses, huh? Tell you what, I'm feeling generous. Sign everything over and I'll give you $20,000. Final offer. Okay, I whispered. When? Tomorrow. Dad's office at the company. Bring whoever you want to witness it. I want this legal and final. After I hung up, Gary smiled for the first time all week. He wants witnesses? We'll give him witnesses. Detective Riley, how fast can you get a warrant for recording devices? The next morning, I called Will again, playing the broken stepsister to perfection. My voice cracked as I spoke. Though the tears were real, they weren't for the reason he thought. Will, I've been thinking. Dad mentioned something about another account a few weeks before he died. Something about Mom's life insurance that was never claimed? I don't want any trouble, but if there's more money somewhere, maybe we could work out a better deal. I could practically hear the dollar signs in his eyes. Another account? How much? I don't know. He just said something about a safety deposit box at First National. Said Mom set it up before she died. Maybe 100,000, maybe more. Will took the bait like a starving fish. You better not be lying to me, Donna. I'm not. I need enough money to start over, to get away from all this. He believed me because he wanted to. Greed is funny that way. It makes smart people stupid and stupid people dangerous. That afternoon, Will showed up at the house with his girlfriend Tiffany. She was 25, blonde, and had that specific kind of giggle that could peel paint. She thought Will was rich. He'd been spending Dad's money on her like it was water. Designer bags, jewelry, trips to Vegas. She hung on his arm and called him Willie Bear, which made even Veronica roll her eyes. Willie Bear says we're going to buy a yacht, Tiffany squealed, admiring herself in the hallway mirror. I've already picked out the name. In Tiffany's dream. Margie, who was there helping me pack my remaining things, couldn't resist. Oh, honey, you might want to pick something shorter. Boat names charge by the letter. Tiffany blinked. They do? Oh, yes. My late husband had a boat. We called it Bob. While Tiffany tried to figure out if Margie was joking, Will tore the house apart looking for information about this mysterious account. He went through Dad's office like a hurricane, throwing papers everywhere, even prying up floorboards in his desperation. Where is it? He finally demanded, grabbing my arm hard enough to leave bruises. I told you, I don't know exactly. Dad was on a lot of medication. He just kept talking about First National and Mom's birthday. Maybe the safety deposit box is under her name. Will's eyes lit up. Of course. Accounts under Mom's name wouldn't have shown up in Dad's estate paperwork. He immediately got on the phone with his banking contacts, trying to trace any accounts under my mother's maiden name. Meanwhile, Detective Riley was building her case. The recording devices we'd planted were picking up everything. Will and Veronica discussing how much digoxin to give Dad, their plans to sell the company to a competitor for half its value, even their contingency plan for dealing with me if I didn't cooperate. We've got enough, Riley told us that night, but I want them all. There's someone else involved. Someone at the hospital who's been providing the extra medication. If we move too soon, they might get away. Gary had his own surprise. I've been doing some digging into that. Will they claim your father signed? The notary who supposedly witnessed it? He died in a car accident 2 weeks ago. Convenient, right? Except I found his secretary. She says he was in Miami that entire week. Couldn't have notarized anything in Pennsylvania. The pieces were falling into place. The meeting tomorrow at Dad's office would be our chance to get everything on record. Riley would have undercover officers there. I'd be wearing a wire. All I had to do was get Will talking. You sure you're up for this, honey? Margie asked, squeezing my hand. You've been through so much already. I thought about Dad, dying slowly while his own stepson poisoned him. I thought about my baby, the stress of everything possibly contributing to the miscarriage. And I thought about all the families Veronica had destroyed before ours. I'm ready, I said. They wanted me to choose how I pay. Tomorrow they'll learn the real price of what they've done. The morning of the meeting, I threw up twice from nerves. Margie held my hair back and reminded me that I was my father's daughter. He built that company from nothing, she said. You've got his strength, honey. Will just has his stolen money and a bad dye job. She wasn't wrong about the dye job. Will had started going gray at 35 and been fighting it with box color ever since. Today, under the fluorescent lights of Dad's office, it looked particularly orange. The office still smelled like Dad's cologne. His coffee mug sat on the desk, still half full from his last day. Will had already installed himself in Dad's chair, feet up on the desk like he owned the place. Tiffany was taking selfies in front of Dad's awards wall, duck-facing at the camera. Let's get this over with, Will said, pushing the papers across the desk. Sign here, here, and here. Then you get your money and you disappear. His notary was there. A greasy-looking guy named Vincent who kept sweating despite the air conditioning. I recognized him from the surveillance photos Riley had shown me. 3-time convicted forger, out on parole. Before I sign, I said, my voice steadier than I felt, I need to understand exactly what I'm signing. Dad always said to read everything. Will rolled his eyes. It's simple. You give up all claims to the estate, the company, everything. In exchange, you get $20,000 and we never have to see each other again. And what about the company employees? I asked. Dad had profit-sharing agreements with them. Not my problem anymore, Will laughed. Company's being sold tomorrow. Fitzgerald Industries offered $3 million. Could have gotten 10 if we waited, but I want this done. There it was, admission number 1. The wire was getting everything. Veronica walked in then, carrying a bottle of champagne. For after, she said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. She looked at me with fake concern. How are you healing, dear? That miscarriage must have been so traumatic. Stress can cause those things, you know. Maybe if you hadn't fought so hard about the will. I wanted to throw something at her, but instead I asked, "How long have you and Will been planning this?" She laughed, that tinkling sound that probably charmed my father initially. Planning what, dear? We're just following your father's wishes. Really? I pulled out my phone, pretending to check something, because I found some interesting emails between you two. Something about handling the old man dating back to last year. Will's face went purple again. You hacked my email? That's illegal. No. You left your computer logged in when you threw me out. That's just stupid. Tiffany looked confused. Willie Bear, what's she talking about? Nothing, baby. Just sign the papers, Donna. I picked up the pen, then paused. One more thing. How did Dad really die? Heart failure, Veronica said quickly. You know that. Right, heart failure. Nothing to do with the triple dose of digoxin you were putting in his coffee every morning? The room went silent. Even Tiffany stopped taking selfies. Will stood up slowly. You don't know what you're talking about, don't I? Old man took his pills like clockwork, double dose in his coffee this morning. Those were your words, Will. In an email to Veronica dated 3 days before Dad died, Vincent the fake notary started edging toward the door, but I kept going. You killed him, Will, slowly, carefully, but you killed him. Just like Veronica killed her 3 previous husbands. Veronica's mask finally slipped. You can't prove anything. Actually, I can. The pills tested positive. The real Will is with Dad's actual lawyer. And that notary who supposedly witnessed your fake will, he was in Miami that week. Will lunged across the desk at me, but this time I was ready. I sidestepped, and he crashed into the filing cabinet. You little Willie Bear, Tiffany shrieked. What's happening? I thought you inherited everything. You said we were rich. We are rich, baby. She's lying. No, Will, you're not rich. You're a thief and a murderer, and you're about to be arrested. That's when the door opened. Detective Riley walked in with 6 federal agents and enough firepower to stop a small army. William Henderson, Veronica Henderson, you're under arrest for murder, embezzlement, wire fraud, and about 15 other charges we'll discuss downtown. Will tried to run. He shoved past Riley and made it about 3 feet before a federal agent tackled him into Dad's prized potted ficus. Dirt went everywhere. Tiffany screamed. Vincent tried to climb out the window but got stuck halfway. This is entrapment, Will shouted, spitting out potting soil. She set me up. No, Riley said, cuffing him. She just let you tell the truth for once in your life. Veronica was smarter. She didn't run. Instead, she tried to destroy evidence, grabbing her phone to delete messages. But Margie, 73 years old and supposedly harmless, whacked the phone out of her hand with her purse. That's assault, Veronica shrieked. Honey, I'm old and confused, Margie said sweetly. I thought it was a weapon. Tiffany, meanwhile, was having a complete meltdown. You told me you were rich, she wailed at Will. You said you owned a company. You said we were going to Paris. I already told all my followers. Baby, I can explain. Explain? Explain? I quit my job at the salon for you. I told everyone I was dating a millionaire. Do you know how embarrassing this is? My mother was right about you. She started hitting him with her designer bag, the one he'd bought with stolen money. The federal agents just let her go for a minute before pulling her back. As they dragged Will out, he made one last, desperate attempt. She attacked me first, at the doctor's office. I was defending myself. Riley pulled out her phone and showed him the security footage from the gynecologist's office. You mean this video? The one where you hit a woman recovering from surgery? The one where 6 witnesses saw you assault her? That attack? Will's face went from purple to white. Vincent, still stuck in the window, started crying. The employees had gathered outside Dad's office, drawn by the commotion. When they saw Will in handcuffs, some started crying, but they were tears of relief. Margaret from accounting actually applauded. "Is it true?" asked Tom, Dad's foreman for 20 years. "Did he really kill Mr. Underwood?" I nodded, and Tom had to be physically restrained from going after Will. "That man gave me a chance when no one else would. He paid for my daughter's cancer treatment." That's when I learned just how many lives my father had touched. Story after story came out. College tuitions paid, medical bills covered, second chances given, and Will had been planning to destroy it all for a quick $3 million. The trial was a circus. Will tried 3 different lawyers, each one quitting when they realized how much evidence we had against him. The financial crimes alone would have put him away for 20 years. But the murder charge, that was different. The prosecutor laid it out beautifully. Will had been stealing from the company for 5 years, but when Dad started getting suspicious, he needed a permanent solution. Enter Veronica, who'd been down this road before. The defendant's stepmother, the prosecutor announced, has a very interesting history with husbands and heart conditions. He pulled up a chart. Husband number 1, Robert Miles, died of a heart attack after 2 years of marriage. Left her $500,000. Husband number 2, Anthony Garrett, kidney failure after 3 years. Left her $1.2 million. Husband number 3, Peter Kalinsky, stroke after 18 months. Left her $2 million. And then we have victim number 4, Douglas Underwood. Net worth approximately $10 million. Cause of death, digitalis poisoning, administered over 6 months. The courtroom gasped. Tiffany, who'd been subpoenaed to testify, took the stand in an outfit more appropriate for a nightclub than a courtroom. Her testimony was unintentionally devastating. "Will told me his stepfather was dying anyway," she said, examining her nails. "He said they were just helping him along so he wouldn't suffer. He said it was merciful. But he also said we'd have $10 million, so I didn't ask questions. Was I supposed to ask questions? My last boyfriend said I asked too many questions." Will's face during her testimony was something to behold. Every time she opened her mouth, his lawyer looked like he wanted to crawl under the table. But the real bombshell came when they found Veronica's storage unit. She'd kept trophies, items from each dead husband. Wedding rings, watches, and most disturbing medical records showing she'd researched their conditions extensively before marrying them. She targeted men with heart conditions, specifically because the medications were easier to manipulate. My father's medical records were there too, annotated in her handwriting. Increase Tuesday dose. Switch Thursday pills. Final increase next week. She'd planned his death down to the day. Then Gary took the stand with Dad's real will and the letter he'd left me. The judge actually had to call a recess when he read the part about Dad knowing he was being poisoned but wanting to gather enough evidence to protect me. "He died getting justice for his daughter," Gary said, his voice breaking. He knew what they were doing, but he also knew if he acted too soon, they'd find another way to hurt Donna. So he endured it. He gathered evidence. He died a hero. The foreman from Dad's company testified about the employee pension fund that Will had been draining. "Mr. Underwood promised us that money for our retirements. Some of us worked there for 30 years. Will Henderson was stealing our futures." 3 other families came forward during the trial. They'd suspected Veronica in their loved ones' deaths but never had proof. A pattern emerged. She'd find wealthy widowers with health conditions, marry them quickly, and they'd be dead within 3 years. Always natural causes, always leaving everything to her. "She's a black widow," one son testified. "She killed my father and I couldn't prove it, but now I know I was right." Will's gambling debts came out too. He owed almost $1 million to some very dangerous people. That's why he was so desperate to sell the company fast. The prosecution presented text messages from someone named Big Eddie, promising to break Will's kneecaps if he didn't pay up. "So you see," the prosecutor concluded, "William Henderson